Hello and welcome to episode 312 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. As always, joined by Evan Silva, and we are coming off of, a hideous week of football. I think I heard a stat that this was the fewest touchdowns scored on a Sunday in like 20 years or something like that. And obviously there were two games not on the slate that got moved to COVID, but that brings me to the other point that COVID has completely reared its ugly head and rocked the boat on all these slates as well, contributing to ugly football and smaller slates, of course. But anyways, we power through. Evan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And yeah, it felt like there were 9 guys. This is a week where Tom Brady's team got shut out. Kyler Murray goes to Detroit, can't do anything. It was a crazy week. It felt like there were like 9 guys that did well on the entire slate, and Will Sue, an established run listener, he had all 9 of those guys in his lineup. But I just want to say that this week I'm going to shorten up the matchups column to really focus on specific situations and hopefully make it less susceptible to major changes that are driven by the COVID stuff. I would do this sometimes at Roto-World in the last 1 or 2 weeks of the season. But it's become humanly impossible with 0 teams on bye and 32 teams playing and guys going on the COVID list early in the week and then coming off the COVID list late in the week to appropriately cover every single game. We were already pushing the limits of human impossibility, to write the freaking thing in the first place. And now that, the league is changing rules to make it so that guys that, normally would be ineligible become eligible and so on and so on. So we're going to spend a lot less time on Brock Wright and Shane Zylstra and, focus on and a lot less time on Tyreek Hill too. And focus on pertinent situations where maybe we can draw advantages and cluster situations, as best we can.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% the right move. A lot of this stuff, we don't know who's going to be playing until Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Obviously, Evan can't write 10,000 words on every game Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's just not possible. And so I think by focusing on situations that are more muddled, and we're going to get to some of those here on this podcast, is really where we can find our edge. We'll be talking about some injury fallout, et cetera, et cetera. I appreciate all you guys adapting with us as we adapt to all this COVID stuff and everything. We're just trying to do the best we can to bring you guys the most value as possible without having a lot of information out there that is no longer valid. All right. On today's show, we'll go team by team, highlighting the most important things we saw from a fantasy perspective and key takeaways. Before we get into it, I want to remind everyone, this show is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks.com. I know you all love the player props. I know it because I see it in the Discord. And I know kind of people don't have access to legal player props. If you're in a state that doesn't, it's very likely that PrizePicks is indeed legal and regulated in your state. You can bet their props in parlay form. If you want to give them a try this week, 100% instant deposit bonus up to $100. Use promo code ETR to get the best deal, or use the link in the show notes. Again, promo code ETR at prizepicks.com for the instant deposit bonus and the best deal. All right, Evan. We have to start with Arizona. I thought it was a flip between, and I thought about playing both of them. I thought it was a flip between Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. I could not believe that given the game script that Kyler Murray got, i.e. Jared Goff played really well. They were in a dome. Given this script, that Kyler Murray failed. Just couldn't believe it. I don't know if you have any takes on how that happened, DeAndre Hopkins related, whatever. And then we have to get to the Rondale Moore and Christian Kirk stuff and stuff like that. But first on Kyler, any takes on what happened to him against the Lions on Sunday?
I don't know. Cliff Kingsbury was asked about it. He said they just came out flat. And I don't know. Sometimes that happens to West Coast teams that play at 1 p.m. Eastern time, a little closer to the East Coast. Detroit is pretty much Midwest, but maybe that explains why they came out so flat early. They got it going, a little bit late, but it was just way too late. Christian Kirk did show up like we hoped, 9 for 94 and a touchdown on 12 targets. It was almost a 50-50 split for James Conner and Chase Edmonds. Cliff Kingsbury didn't help matters by going for field goals when they were down 17-0 and then down 24-3. You're kicking a field goal down 24-3. They weren't long field goals. They were they were in scoring position. But sometimes teams just have bad games. I will say that this is now 2 games in a row where Kyler Murray really hasn't played well. He didn't play well against the Rams either the previous week. But it was, not a very good showing.
Yeah. And I mean, Kyler targeted Antoine Wesley 8 times and Zach Ertz 11 times. And so it's hard to make big plays with Antoine Wesley and Zach Ertz. I will say that Zach Ertz at, kind of a barren tight end position. He has a 20.5% target share without DeAndre Hopkins this year. And also Rondale Moore got hurt in this game. And I hated the way they were using Rondale Moore, but at least he's an explosive playmaker. Rondale Moore went for an MRI on his ankle. We'll see how it comes back. Evan mentioned the split. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was they didn't think that James Conner was healthy enough or whatever, but Chase Edmonds ran a ton of routes. Before this game, it was Chase Edmonds clearly had the pass game role ahead of James Conner. In this game, James Conner actually ran more routes. So we'll see. Maybe Chase Edmonds will get healthier as we go along here. But yeah, a lot to watch with Arizona. Atlanta. I don't have a lot on Atlanta. I expected them to go to San Francisco and get trucked, and that's what happened. But every time I watch Russell Gage, man, I'm Russell Gage is out there making plays, dude. And I can't believe it because I didn't think he was good enough to do this. But he's making plays down the field now also. So I guess my question is Russell Gage good now? And anything else you saw on the Falcons?
I mean, I think he's, in this spectrum of these slot receivers that can, and you're right, he made a big play downfield in this pass game. But he's on this spectrum of slot receivers that really feed off of volume, but he's getting the volume. When he's getting the volume, and over the last 5 games, he's averaging almost 9 targets per game. So that gives him a lot of playmaking opportunities. He's a fine athlete. Remember, he was a special teamer. He was drafted to be a special teamer coming out of LSU. And I mean, he's improved his game, and now he's getting opportunities to make plays. And he's a fine athlete. So he's capitalizing on those opportunities. Cordero Patterson, his first game where he really came back down to earth here, he only had 13 touches, 23 scoreless yards against the 49ers. And it was looking like he was the clear-cut focal point of the offense, like the offensive centerpiece for a while. He didn't look like that in this game. Mike Davis was pretty heavily involved. Kyle Pitts had a decent game, 77 yards. Russell Gage had a really good game. But CPAT did not look like the focal point of the Falcons offense here.
I mean, you can't expect rush game efficiency to sustain like Cordero Patterson had been having 11 carries for 18 yards here. So ideally it'd be supplemented by pass game work, but they don't use him in the pass game anymore. He had 2 targets. I mean, Matt Ryan threw it 32 times and Cordero Patterson had 2 targets. And so this is kind of like the regression that obviously we've been waiting for all season on Cordero Patterson. Carolina. I don't have a lot to say on Carolina, man. I mean, they went up to Buffalo, obviously a completely horrible spot for them in every manner. They go up to Buffalo. Cam Newton did last the whole game, did not get subbed out for PJ Walker, but, they only scored once before garbage time. They were just drawing dead, and now they have to go play the Bucs next, and I get that the Bucs are banged up. We'll get to that, but still another brutal spot for them. So hard for me to click any Panthers at this point. Any takes on them?
They're an offense that you stream defenses against. They're going to give the ball to the other team. And their pass protection has been an issue, going back to Sam Darnold. So every week we should be looking at the defense that is facing the Panthers as a potential DFS play, defense that you could pick up off the waiver wire. Chuba Hubbard and Amir Abdullah are pretty much right down the middle in terms of usage, and they lose stuff to Cam Newton. So the backfield is just, you can't really use guys in this backfield. Now they do face the Buccaneers coming up. We'll talk about that. It's a much better matchup for Amir Abdullah because he's used so much more in the passing game, and you can't run on the Bucs.
Yep. Let's go to Chicago. They played the game last night against Minnesota. I didn't think Justin Fields was that bad, but they couldn't score. And I get they got some rough calls from the refs and whatever, but I don't know, man. It's just hard for me to get excited about anything there. I do think that Darnell Mooney, when he's out there, looks really good. And obviously Cole Kmet has a really nice role. So does David Montgomery, but floor is low. I also thought Matt Nagy was going to blow his head off. I thought he was going to give himself a heart attack. He was on such tilt last night. What'd you see out of the Bears?
Yeah, they had over 400 yards of total offense, and they scored, 9 points? Too many drops. I thought the play calling was kind of conservative. The fumble by Justin Fields, I mean, he's got to take care of he's got a fumbling problem, which is not something that, is especially rare for rookie quarterbacks. I mean, it's somewhat common, but man, he's got to take care of the ball better than that. But yeah, I mean, they had a lot of missed opportunities. The Vikings defense is not good, and gave the Bears opportunities. They missed too many, but they still went for over 400 total yards. But yeah, I mean, they're just not a good football team.
I know. I'm interrupting the video. Wah. But if you're enjoying this video and want to see more fantasy football and DFS content like it, please just take 2 seconds, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. Really does go a long way for us, and we'd appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and now back to the show. Let's go to Dallas, and it was probably bad. I played Dak in cash on DraftKings, and by the way, that wasn't even the worst mistake that I made on the week. I mean, it was just such a bad week for me in cash. But playing Dak, I was like, man, if I can get 30 attempts from Dak against the Giants with all his weapons healthy, like, we're printing, right? And I like that better than playing Tua. It turns out that Dak threw 37 times against the Giants and still didn't get there. And so at this point with Dak, like, he's not completing passes down the field. Like, everything is short. Everything is to Dalton Schultz, like, for 5 yards. Everything is to CeeDee Lamb at the slot for 5 yards. There's nothing down the field. It's obviously hard to have big games that way. We've talked a ton about Dak. I still thought this was a reasonable spot for him. Anything for you on the Cowboys, as they're winning with defense, man. I mean, they just go and like smother teams, and that's bottom line.
Yeah, I think they have a great argument for the best defense in the NFL. Now, if you look at them in terms of yards per play allowed, they're not elite, but they force so many turnovers. And I know that we know that turnovers can regress to the mean, but I mean, as long as you keep doing it, like, that matters. Trevon Diggs is up to 10 interceptions. Their pass rush is just, I mean, they have the football team coming up next, and I mean, they're going to continue to mash with their pass rush. I thought it was interesting that Dak Prescott, after the game, talked about how, Dalton Schultz had a big game. He talked about how this was the first game where Dalton Schultz was higher than like the number 3 read, and that he's like moving up in his progressions. I thought that was interesting. It kind of explains why tight ends can be so inconsistent, is because they're usually not, unless it's George Kittle or something, the number 1 or number 2 read in the quarterback's progression. So you have to get to the 3rd read, which means the first and the second guy have to be covered. So that kind of explains why tight ends of this caliber, Tyler Higbee, across the league, and Dalton Schultz, why they can be so inconsistent. Tony Pollard, I mean, I think their running game looked good. I thought Zeke looked good. And then after the game, both Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore, their OC, said that they think that Zeke Elliott has turned the corner in his recovery from his knee injury. Now, he did only have 72 yards on 19 touches, but I mean, I thought he looked better. Tony Pollard looked great, and there were questions about whether or not he was going to play, and he looked excellent out there.
I agree with you. Zeke looked better. Zeke looked healthier. Pollard still looked way better. I mean, it's even when Zeke is healthier, Pollard still looks better. It's funny. Lions, and actually, like, man, the Lions are not like the Jets or the Giants or the Texans or the Jaguars. Like, they're playing hard, and like, Goff is so much better. And I'm not saying Goff is good. He's so much better than, Zach Wilson or Mike Glennon or Trevor Lawrence or Davis Mills, or like all these teams that are drawing dead. Like, Goff can go out there and like get guys fantasy stats. And you see it in Craig Reynolds, who's played great. I mean, I know we talked about it during the week. I ended up playing Craig Reynolds on a team, but It was a Kyler team. So it was drawing dead. But still, like, Craig Reynolds is playing well. He's clearly way ahead of Jamar Jefferson and Gordon I. And then also, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, he's going full-blown Cooper Kupp. I mean, 33% target share last 3 games. He's caught 10, 8, and 8 balls the last 3 games. And so they're not giving up. They're playing hard. They play in a dome. Like, there's actually fantasy stuff to be had here. So I think it's just a way different situation for a bad team than it normally is. What do you see out of the Lions? Big win, easy win over the Cardinals.
Yeah, Dan Campbell, people he's kind of easy to rib because of some of the things that he says, but man, those dudes on the team are rallying behind him. I mean, he's like a legit leader. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see because Jamal Williams was just activated from the COVID list. Do they go back to Jamal Williams? They probably do, don't they?
I think so, yeah.
Think about these situations over the years. That's what they do. They go back to the veteran, that they paid some money to. Craig Reynolds will stay involved, but it's going to be really. I mean, he had 27 touches in this game, and he's probably going to get down like to the 8 to 11 range. And Jamal Williams will split with him. Have you heard anything? Is DeAndre Swift done?
I think he's done. The rumor is that he's done. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did we hear that? Do we hear that from the Ford family carpenter?
Packers. I mean, Evan was on it, man. The MVS. I mean, this was such a good spot for MVS. He came in at like 2 or 3% owned, and MVS played a great game. If you watch the game, and actually I retweeted like a screenshot, I think Field Yates had it. I mean, I've never seen this really. They were doubling Devontae Adams, not just like around the goal line, everywhere on the field. They had 2 corners on Devontae Adams. Obviously, when you do that, you're going to leave Lazard and MVS open, but it was wild. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sick to my stomach because I had a bunch of really good Tom Brady MVP tickets, and now Rodgers is the favorite at plus 125. I had a bunch of Brady at like 8-1 and 7-1. And now it looks like, if I had to guess, I mean, it looks like Rodgers is going to end up, or he in theory should win it. So what'd you see out of the Packers? Great call on MVS. Anything else? Yeah,
well, great call on the Devontae Adams under. I gave you way too much shit about that, guys. I bend the knee again. He finished with 6 for 44 and a touchdown, as you mentioned. A lot of cover. I mean, that made all the sense in the world, actually. It wound up working against Devontae Adams somewhat, that the Ravens had so many dudes out. Like, they just specifically game planned to try to take him away, but that left them vulnerable on the other side, and Marcus Valdes-Scantling took advantage. Clearly, the A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones timeshare is not going away. In season long, they're both RB2 starters with RB1 upside. Yeah, Aaron, and it hurt Brady that game occurred in prime time.
Yeah.
Particularly. And yeah, so now Aaron Rodgers is, I think, plus 110 to win MVP. Rodgers over his last 4 games has accounted for 14 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And then, showed the ability to get it done even while the defense was scheming to take away his clear-cut number 1 weapon.
Matt LaFleur, by the way, like during the broadcast, they always meet with the coaches, the broadcast team does. And during the broadcast, they said that Matt LaFleur said he wants to get Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon roughly the same amount of touches. And over the last 2 weeks, Aaron Jones had 23 touches, A.J. Dillon has 23 touches. And I think that's what we can expect going forward. Rams are next. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. Rams are playing tonight as part of the postponed game, so we're going to go ahead and skip them. We will go to the Minnesota Vikings, who, I mean, Kirk Cousins threw for 87 yards, and they won. And they won actually pretty easily. And it's not like Dalvin went off either. It was just a really weird game. I will say that with Adam Thielen out, 10 out of Cousins' 24 targets went to Justin Jefferson. Dude is just so good and earns targets at such a high rate. But yeah, what you see out of the Vikings, kind of weird win against the Bears last night.
Same thing that you saw. But Dalvin Cook, touch counts over his last 2 games, 28 and 30. And that's something that we talked about, I think it was on the Sunday morning show, is that Dalvin Cook just has this ability to that so few guys have to get legit 30 touches. Actually, I think we were talking about it with about like Joe Mixon, and then who are some other guys that have that in their range of outcomes. And Dalvin Cook, I mean, there's just so few guys like that. And he can, he doesn't even need to be necessarily highly efficient as a runner to have a big fantasy day when he's getting those kind of workloads.
Yeah, Alexander Mattison was out for this game due to COVID. I think he'll be back for the Rams game, but I'm not certain about that because I think he might have been unvaccinated, but I'm actually not sure, so I shouldn't say. But they play the Rams next week. We'll see if Mattison is back for that. Saints. So this is what I was talking about, with the Ingram stuff and the Taysom stuff with Alvin Kamara. I mean, Alvin Kamara had 11 carries. Mark Ingram had 9. Alvin Kamara only ran 17 routes on 30 Taysom dropbacks. Alvin Kamara only sees 6 targets. And so you can see how playing with Taysom and having Mark Ingram in the mix can kind of cap Kamara's usage a little bit. I thought that's notable. I know I've been talking about it for months and months and months on end. But anything else you saw on the Saints, who shockingly shut out the Bucs?
No, I mean, the Saints just, they have found ways really all year to win ugly, and it's not a fun fantasy team. We've had moments from, I mean, Alvin Kamara has had some big games. We've had moments from Taysom Hill, but other than that, I mean, just it is not. It's a very fantasy unfriendly team.
Giants. Speaking of fantasy unfriendly, I mean, like there's been so many times on paper this year where Jets and Giants have been a good play in DFS, like undoubtedly on paper, a good play. There's something that like is missing with these teams, and the Giants just cannot score. I mean, 31st in touchdowns per game in 2 straight years. I mean, just something is just off. And it's not even like I want to blame Mike Glennon, but something was off with them with Daniel Jones also, and so now Sterling Shepard is out for the year, and if Kadarius Toney comes back or something, I'm sure that it'll look like good value, but I'm really trying to like train myself to be like, on paper, Jets and Giants stuff is not what it seems. Shout out to Sterling Shepard though, unfortunate thing that happened to him. Mm-hmm. Anything else for you on the Giants?
Yeah, Sterling Shepard tore his Achilles. That's rough, especially at the end of the year. I mean, he probably opens next season on the reserve PUP. But Kadarius Toney is expected back. That was reported. So I mean, he's going to be back out there. He flashed in a couple of games earlier this season, and they should be looking to feed him late in the year. But I hear you, just trying to avoid these broken offenses, especially at this time of year and down the stretch. I mean, they just, the light is not going to flip on. It's week 16.
Yeah,
and it's not happening. There was a lot of talk on Twitter on Sunday about how Devontae Booker and Saquon Barkley, like even the announcers watching the game, they were like, they would get them mixed up.
Yeah,
and I think Saquon Barkley is more explosive, like laterally still, but moving up the field in terms of being able to like get north south. Or to be able to get north. I mean, they're the same guy. I mean, that's where Saquon has lost it. He's just not as explosive getting up the field.
Yeah.
Oh, and also speaking of Carpenters, John Maris Carpenter was right. Daniel Jones done for the season.
Correct. Giants play the Eagles next, and speaking of the Eagles, they are the next team here, but they do also play tonight in the postponed game against the Washington football team. We're going to go ahead and skip them, going to the San Francisco 49ers. So Eli Mitchell was out again, and I had Jeff Wilson. Like most of the teams in cash that I looked at, I was going to play Jeff Wilson. Silva was on Jeff Wilson. I mean, Silva called it exactly. Like, yeah, Debo's going to play. There is going to be a great pass game role for Jeff Wilson, but against Atlanta at home, even if Jeff Wilson only gets 15 carries, like he could have a huge game, and he did. He got the bonus. We will see on Eli Mitchell's status going forward. Debo's role, though, man, like, yeah, 5 targets and 6 carries, like that sounds fine or whatever, but his targets aren't even like as valuable as a lot of other people's because like they're so close to the line of scrimmage. They're kind of running back targets. So I don't know, man. Like I'm fine with my decision, like to hardly play any Debo all year. But anyways, easy win for the 49ers. What'd you see out of them?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, and this was not something that I anticipated about Jeff Wilson, was that he became an every down back. JaMychal Hasty was not the passing down back. Jeff Wilson played 88% of the snaps.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something I would have, if you would have told me before the game that he'd play 60%, I'd be like, let's fucking go,
Yeah.
But 88%, 23 touches. He looked healthy. And now Elijah Mitchell is not expected back. Kyle Shanahan said that he was skeptical or to doubtful that Elijah Mitchell was going to be able to play on Thursday night against the Titans. Now it's short week for Jeff Wilson. It'll be interesting to see if they continue to use him in that capacity. He was an every down back against the Falcons.
Going to Seattle, they play again also tonight, skipping them and going to Tampa. So obviously a lot to talk about here. They scored 0 points. A factor in them scoring 0 points was Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette all got hurt to varying degrees. And I do feel bad for Chris Godwin, man. Obviously I've been Chris Godwin fan, big fan going back to Penn State. Was all over him in his breakout year, which was great, and won Super Bowl. Like he seems like a legit good dude. Does Chris Godwin, blows out his ACL. I think he's also a free agent. It's just like so painful what happened to Chris Godwin. Yeah. And also Mike Evans, I think it was his hamstring. He's going to be day-to-day / week-to-week going forward. Leonard Fournette has already announced he's going to miss 1 to 2 weeks. So we have a lot to chew on here. I do think that Antonio Brown is off suspension. Brashad Perriman should be back from the COVID list. So I think the 3 wide set is likely Antonio Brown, Brashad Perriman, and some mix of Tyler Johnson or Scotty Miller. So I'm curious how you think about that. And then we got to talk about Rojo with Lenny Fournette out.
Yeah, Tyler Johnson has played pretty clearly ahead of Scott Miller all season long. So I would anticipate him. What do you think he could move into the slot and then Antonio Brown outside? Yeah, that's what it's going to have to be, I think. Antonio Brown will be like the Z, Brashad Perriman the X, and Tyler Johnson the slot, moving into Chris Godwin's role. Yeah. In this particular game, when after they lost all the dudes, I mean, the offense became really condensed. They were playing a really talented defense in the Saints. Saints have been a little bit up and down on defense, but man, they have a ton of talent at every level of their defense. And that explained, all those factors combined to explain why the Buccaneers were shut out. I think Brady's going to be able to, design something along with Leftwich and Bruce Arians, and they're going to get the offense back moving against Carolina. They still have a really good offensive line. They still have Tom Brady, but in that particular game, I mean, they wound up being overmatched. Ronald Jones, I know we made fun of him, at times over the years, and we've been right. But we're not going to overthink this. Like Ronald Jones with no Giovanni Bernard, no Leonard Fournette. Like, we're not overthinking this. Ronald Jones should get a ton of work. As a number of fantasy analysts have pointed out this week, when Ronald Jones has had opportunities, he's made the most of them. So we're not overthinking this. Like, he's going to get a ton of work against Carolina.
I will say that Keyshawn Vaughn was active for this game in place of Gio Bernard, and Keyshawn Vaughn played 19 snaps and ran 15 routes after Leonard Fournette left. So, like, it's not going to be the Leonard Fournette role for Ronald Jones. The Leonard Fournette role was absolutely outrageous. Ronald Jones will not have that role, but it's still a really good role. And also, Tom Brady throws the running backs just such a high rate on every down. I mean, I think Leonard Fournette had like 4 catches on the first drive or something before he got hurt. I mean, it was insane. And so I think Ronald Jones can catch 2 or 3 balls on early downs.
I was just going to say that, and Keyshawn Vaughn probably, I mean, that's been one of the biggest things. The reasons why, I've been kind of like anti-Ronald Jones is because he has never shown even any level of competency in the passing game. And he's a good runner. I mean, he is, he's a legit good runner, but he's never shown any level of competency in the passing game to the extent that, like, they can't have him on the field. In passing situations, because he's going to get the 44-year-old quarterback blown up, or he's going to drop a pass. But you're right. I think that, he's going to have a shot at like 3 or 4 catches in this game, even though because of Tom Brady's propensity to check the ball down and take what the defense gives him. And he's going to have a lot of good running opportunities as well. So he's going to be an awesome fantasy play at Carolina. We're not overthinking this.
Exactly. And Leone's best ball teams are going to end up right, even though they were wrong. When you draft 100% Ronald Jones and you get some best ball teams through, they're all going to have Ronald Jones. And so now you run into this spot where you have Ronald Jones in best ball for semifinal week. Absolutely ridiculous. All right. That is going to do it for this team by team podcast. We're obviously skipping Washington football team because they play tonight as well. Enjoy the games tonight. 2-game slate projections are up for that. Ownership, ceiling, value, everything. For Evan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.